Hi. Well, you've stumbled onto yet another episode of Let's Chat Sales. And in this short episode, I think it's like 7 or so minutes, we talk about one way to find new sales opportunities, especially in a B2B space. Bob and I kind of dig into it, how to think about it, what to look for, and I hope it's helpful. And let's dive in. All right. So, Bob, it's another episode of Let's Chat Sales.
Let's chat sales.
No, it never gets old. So in this episode, I want to talk about how you find an opportunity. How do you do that? And this
I
is just
called the
one.
CEO of the company, right?
Yeah, you could call the CEO of the company. Hey, what's wrong? Well, they're not going to tell you what's wrong because they think everything's going great. Or if they are thinking something's wrong, they think about it at this very high level. That's one way to find it. And it's really great if you can call on some senior executive decision maker. That's good. That's a good relationship to have because ultimately that's where the approval gets made. But that's not typically where the problem exists, right? Most of the time, those people, if they know about the problem, they know about it only tangentially or at some very high macro level. And so one of my mantras, or one of the things I like to say, is that when you're selling into any kind of a business, and really when you're selling to anyone, it's everybody matters. I just think that's an important philosophical framework to have because it's the people down in the organization, deep in the organization sometimes, that know exactly what's going wrong, and they're the ones that have to deal with it, and they're the ones that struggle. This is where you can find a whole new business, or you can find an angle in that solves a problem.
And it might be just part of the problem you ultimately want to solve, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's just really marrying what they're struggling with to what you can do
yeah.
and then getting your foot in the door, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And the nice thing about it is that because they're living with the problem and they need to get it solved, they can share with you lots of very specific details. These are the sorts of things that build your case study. Like, hey, if you solve this problem, you can reduce the error rate by X%, or you can compress the shipping time by 3 days. And that's the sort of stuff that you don't get from the CEO or some senior person typically.
Right. Well, and those people in the trenches also often will provide you exactly what the right solution is.
Yeah, yeah,
They just can't do it. They're caught within a system. But I've had people say to me, if I were starting a company, this is what I would
yeah,
do.
yeah.
And like
And
you take copious notes, and it's like, hey, funny, I've got a company that can do that.
yeah, you can be that company. If you're a founder looking for an idea, pick your industry, talk to a bunch of people down in the bowels of the organization that have to get stuff done. You're going to find all sorts of situations where they're doing everything on spreadsheets, or they're doing everything with paper, or they're using some antiquated system that's what they call baling wire and chewing gum to keep things together. There are opportunities galore that way, but you have to find them. I think you have to find them down in among the people that have to live with the problem.
And you have to listen.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not you looking for them to say what you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It's let me gather all this information and figure out what the solution is that they need in that moment.
Yeah.
But Brendan,
Exactly.
I know one of the challenges that would come up with someone is if I'm a founder and I'm talking to anyone in a company, I'm happy because
Right.
it's really hard. Sometimes it's hard to get
Yeah.
even to get a phone call with someone. So
Right.
how do you negotiate that? I've got someone, but they're not really that person. How do you go to actually get to that person at the not top levels?
That's a great question. So if you're talking to someone pretty high up in the organization, then they don't usually have any resistance to you talking to people underneath them. It's usually the
Okay.
other way around. People have a resistance to saying, I want you, I don't really want you going over my head. But if you're talking to some senior vice president, then the simple way to do it is to say, I'd like to understand this from a much more of a grassroots level. So who could I talk to in your organization that would know this problem? Because I want to make sure, and you could say that you're qualifying. I want to see if we can actually fix this for you. Because if we can't, you're going to get a call back from me and say, I'm sorry, but this is not in our area of expertise and we can't build it, or we could build it, but it would be extra. It'd be a custom deal. And maybe that's what you want to do. But typically that senior person will not be that resistant to, oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so in this department. And you should talk, and they'll point you to the right people. And then if you get some senior level person saying, hey, you should talk to this manager, and that manager will find you someone, it's pretty unlikely that they'll resist. Some senior level person says, you got to talk to so-and-so. and they'll put you in touch, they're probably going to do it, because you're otherwise going
Wow.
to circle back around and say, hey, I called so-and-so, that manager, and they just weren't responsive. And typically
Right.
the answer is, oh, really? Let me see about that. And then they'll recalibrate their priorities, so to speak.
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
So
I've been
the
someone
reason-
who's had to recalibrate at times.
Yeah. So the reason why this is an interesting problem is because, as you can probably imagine, what happens is someone down at the level that's working on this stuff doesn't typically, if they report these things up, they get filtered, they get minimized, and so forth. And oftentimes, someone's got so many problems to dealing with that this just doesn't rank as a priority. But if you can come in and solve it, you can figure out a way to solve it. Like, hey, here's the problem you have, and this is the value, and I can solve it, and you don't have to do anything except, cut a PO or whatever. Then all of a sudden, oh, that problem's off the plate, and you've done that. So those opportunities are just there. Just as kind of a little background, the way this prompted me is I've kind of always, this has been a strategy that I've just always employed. And with enterprise sales in particular, when you've got accounts where you're in there all the time, this pays off because you're constantly finding little areas of inefficiency and opportunity. But it was prompted to me by a Michael Lewis podcast, because they were talking about Athena Health and how they went after level six people down inside the organization. And that kind of prompted me. So if everyone wants to listen to a Michael Lewis podcast, it's just kind of a clever little story. And it just prompted me because that's kind of what I do. Now, you can't do this for all your clients unless you're a solution shop and that's what you focus on. But if you're dealing with some big enterprise account where you think that there's a lot of opportunity and long-term opportunity relationship, this pays off.
Couldn't it also be an opportunity to get into a company that you don't have an established relationship with?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's certainly easier in some ways if you're already established with that company. But to me, talking to people that actually are dealing with the day-to-day problems can really be a gold mine. And they will also champion you up the ladder.
Right.
Well, this guy's really spent a lot of time listening to what we're trying to do. He really gets us.
Yeah.
I think you should really listen to him.
Yeah, exactly. And this could be, you run into someone at a kid's soccer game or a cocktail party, or or wherever, a bookstore, and I don't know, however you run into someone, you get to talk to them, and they happen to be at, I don't know, Black & Decker, whatever. Anyway, you're chatting about something, and you say, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, what are you working on? And it could be some guy or gal, that's just working on some particular, well, what works? What doesn't? I mean, how's it going? How's it, and then you start probing in on that. Now, there may be an offer, hey, we might be able to help you with that. You just never know. But those opportunities are everywhere,
Well, as you would say, Brendan, I think we've kicked the crap out of this enough for one day, right?
Yes, we have. I think it was good.
All right. I am hopeful.
Yeah.
And I'm anticipating we'll get to do another episode of Let's Chat Sales.
Odds are good.
Folks, if you really like Let's Chat Sales, rate us 5 stars and share it with someone else so that we can chat sales even more.
Very good. Good talking to you, Bob.
See ya.
Okay, that was another episode of Let's Chat Sales, a quick one, of course, and I hope it was helpful. And if it was, please like and subscribe, and more importantly, share it with your friends. There should be something right here you could point to and click on and try that out. It should be good. It's probably good. Certainly short. It's probably helpful. And thanks for listening or watching.